With the cost of living crisis coming up, younger people are looking abroad for a better, more cost-effective lifestyle.
But one economist says tonight that everyone under 50 should seriously consider quitting Britain as the only way to have a better and more prosperous life.
Why no one wants to live in the UK. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, a country present in northwestern Europe that's surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, the North Sea, and the English Channel, and is homeland of the Beatles, Manchester United, Harry Potter, and about 68.2 million people. For years, this country has been the epitome of culture, architecture, industrial development, and economic growth. Millions of non-natives have made the UK their home just because of the opportunities that the country provided. But today, something has horribly changed. A country that's economically the 6th richest country in the world is facing one of the biggest breakdowns, and suddenly, no one wants to live there. So how exactly did this happen? To start, there are a number of reasons behind this, but the most important ones are lower wages, high property rates, drastic increase in taxes, and the ever-increasing homelessness and inflation. Homelessness. Take homelessness, for example. According to an estimate in 2023, 1 in 50 people in Britain's biggest city of London was homeless. Just a decade ago, this number was 0.5 for every 50 people. For context, this number is higher than all of Europe, the United States, Australia, Canada, and even populated countries like Spain and Mexico. This can be explained by the weekly wages that an average British citizen earns. Now, for the past 15 years, the average weekly wage in the UK has been almost the same, without any noticeable growth. So, this means that an average British citizen in 2024 earns almost the same of what he was earning in 2008, while at the same time, the inflation has risen dramatically over the past couple of years. Now, in addition to general household items, groceries, and services, one industry that has taken a major hit of inflation is housing. The UK has always been a country with lesser homes per population as compared to its European counterparts. There can be a range of reasons for this, but some of the major ones include strict planning laws, less funding for housing, and prioritization of other economic areas. With the country's native population increasing and more people moving to the UK, the demand for housing skyrocketed, but the supply to meet this demand just wasn't there. So, as compared to the 90s, the amount of houses available for sale has decreased by 20%, and the country today has 1.4 million less houses in social housing than it did in the year 1980. As a result, the existing houses, especially in cities like Manchester and London, have become so expensive that a young person who's in the beginning of their career just can't afford to be a homeowner. But that isn't all. Even if you're okay with not being a homeowner and wish to rent, that too will cause a huge dent in your bank account. Because of the increased demand and less supply, the private housing in the UK has increased their rents to dramatic levels. To cope with this problem, many middle and lower middle class households have moved to temporary housing in the past decade. The shift has been so alarming that in 2010, the number of households living in temporary housing was just under 48,000. However, today this number has more than doubled to over 112,000 households. Lesser opportunities. If you look into the 80s, 90s, and even the early 2000s, England was the place where every person wanted to move. It had a growing economy, an established service sector, and an ever-increasing industrial capacity. But in the last decade or so, all of these opportunities seem to be diminished. Today, an average educated and trained person earns less than a half here of what they can earn in America, Australia, or even Germany. As a result, the UK is seeing one of the largest brain drains as compared to its European counterparts. With each passing year, more and more educated youngsters are moving to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the US for better career opportunities. And all of this can be boiled down to one single reason: a decrease in productivity. You see, productivity is basically the efficiency and capacity of a country by which it provides goods, services, and jobs. And for every developing as well as developed country, it is the ultimate key to growth. Now, till 2008, the UK was seeing an annual 2% increase in productivity. However, after the 2008 period, this graph has been completely flat, with the growth even decreasing in the 2020-2022 COVID period. As a result, the country's growth has decreased in the industrial and service sector, which means less innovation, less jobs, or jobs with lower wages, and hence, lesser opportunities to grow. A dying health sector. For any country to truly flourish, it has to fulfill three basic needs of the general public: education, housing, and healthcare. Now, as far as healthcare is concerned, England has been known to be excellent in this regard since the creation of the NHS, a publicly funded healthcare care sector that provides free treatment to the general English public. Unfortunately, with every other thing, this thought to be a perfect system is crashing too. There are numerous reasons behind this crash, but the foremost one is an increased population. In 1948, when this system was created, the country's population was less than 50 million people. Today, it's 68.35 million, with the percentage of elderly increased drastically. That means that more people are in need of health care, consultation, treatment, and medicine. However, the country and NHS isn't ready or equipped enough to meet this demand. According to official data, in 2014, the amount of people waiting for a consultation in government hospitals was 3 million. Today, the number has gone up to 7.4 million. This much difference in supply and demand has resulted in a below-average treatment facility in government hospitals, with the UK having the lowest survival rates for diseases like stroke, cancer, and heart attack, as compared to the US and other Western European countries. The problem is increased even further due to the fact that most of the trained doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals now prefer to work in the US and Australia because of a high wage disparity. Inflation. There's no doubt that after and during the COVID crisis, inflation rose quickly in almost every country of the world, but England was one of the worst affected countries in the Western Hemisphere. The UK inflation rate in 2024 is 1.7%, which, by the way, has come down as compared to 2023. But that's still not good enough. Between September 2022 and March 2023, the country went through 7 months of double-digit inflation, which peaked at 11.1% in October of 2022. During this period, general household items faced an all-time high price hikes, which still haven't come down. To give you a better idea of this alarming situation, the inflation rate never exceeded 5.4 for 28 years between 1993 and 2021. Now, there can be various reasons for the elevated levels of inflation, especially seen since 2021. But the major one is the global pandemic that happened 3 years ago. After the COVID-19 pandemic, supply chains of England failed to meet the renewed demand for goods and services, and the prices of food, fuel, and other supplies increased. As a result of these factors, inflation is high across Europe and the rest of the world. Unfortunately, the wage increase, as discussed before, hasn't been able to match this inflation, and as a result, with each passing year, more and more people are forced to live below the poverty line. Decreased living standards. For decades, the West, and especially England, has been known for its perfect living standards. Unfortunately, this is no longer true. With less housing and more temporary or rental housing, the living standards in the country have dramatically decreased. Most of these homes are ridden with insects, diseases, and mold. Because of the lack of homes, most of such families are constantly on the move, and it means no schools, but even if you have a permanent residence, the increased cost of living has made it hard for an average person to get or give a quality education. What is the government doing? As of 2023, the UK government is trying to cope with these problems, but the process is slow and painful. Take the NHS, for example. In 2023, the country's healthcare system received one of the largest fundings from the government to increase the wages of healthcare professionals, hire more people, and do everything that's required to shorten the waiting list. Similarly, the housing crisis is also being dealt with by the government, attracting more and more investors to fuel up the country's social housing and provide homes to households that need them the most. But obviously, this will take some time. To meet up with the brain drain, more and more educated individuals from the foreign countries are joining the UK's workforce and increasing the productivity of the country little by little. Conclusion: with more and more natives leaving the country for better opportunities, it's evident that most of the sectors in the UK are heading towards a dead end. But given the country's history and the fact that it's still the 6th largest economy of the world, it's important to note that the UK is fairly capable of turning its luck around.